when you're in like social settings back in the days when you could be in social settings, not like a work event, but more of, a cocktail party or things like that, and someone asks what you do, how do you explain it to them?
Well, I just say I deal in cryptocurrency, or I deal with blockchain technology, and that usually I like talking. I mean, I'm the guy that'll talk about it for an hour and just won't shut up, right?
Yeah.
But usually it's easy to say like blockchain technology, and people are like, well, I have no idea what that is.
Right.
Now, keep in mind that this has been quite some time since I've had this conversation because I have been holed up. There hasn't been any active, discussions with anybody, other than that. But back in the day, it was pretty much like blockchain and crypto, and that was always an interesting conversation.
Yeah, just because it's fascinating, and I'm enough of a geek that I have some background in it, but I could just imagine other people trying to explain it, and yet a lot of what your company does is going to these are the people it seems like you're going to want to try and reach, especially with your BlockCard. Is you guys are going to bridge the gap between these two worlds.
It's the future of money, the future of banking, right? Of finance and how people deal with money. The thing is, though, people know how to use email, but they don't know how email works.
Right.
Right. I mean, like it was built. You have this technology, and you have basically an application that's built on top of that was supposed to be user friendly, so that grandma could log in and intuitively type in an address, and then send, and it changed the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so as long as I think it comes down to as long as you can build an application in an interface that people are comfortable and that is intuitive, that's our challenge. That's what's going to differentiate. To me, it's the difference between. I'll always go back to this. This is my example that I love to talk about. I haven't talked about in a while. When Bill Gates came out, I don't know, it was like 2001, something like that, and he says, Microsoft just built the product that is going to be the biggest product in history, right? And it's a total dud. Okay, did not do anything. 2 years later, a man, Steve Jobs, comes out with a product that's the same fucking thing. Okay? Now, it was packaged differently. The application of the technology was different because it was the difference between the Microsoft tablet and the iPhone.
Yeah.
And that alone was the same technology, but it was how it worked for the consumer. And one became the biggest product in history, and the other was kind of like just was too early and didn't really execute well. And I think that's really going to be our challenge. How do you use that underlying technology so that normal people who don't have any idea about Bitcoin can either A, use Bitcoin, or more importantly, the future of money is not necessarily Bitcoin, although I'm a big fan of Bitcoin. I love Bitcoin, but it really is in using stable tokens and being able to custody your own money, send money across the world in 2 seconds without needing a gatekeeper, not having to pay a wire fee, having to ask permission from the bank. You just shoot the money over like you would an email, and you're in business. You're paying invoices, and you can do it for no cost whatsoever. Depending on the blockchain. To me, that is the future of money, and as long as the businesses that build great applications on top of that technology are going to be the ones that do well, and the ones that struggle to make it consumer friendly are going to not do well.
Yeah, and actually, I don't know if you saw. I believe you follow him, but Mark Cuban had some comments on Twitter just yesterday about.
I didn't see his comments yesterday.
Well, it kind of fit as I was doing research for his interview. It kind of fit in with a lot of the stuff that you've been talking about personally, because he talked about cryptocurrency and things of that nature, and just how it's like this new tech boom, and there's going to be players there that are going to really be ahead of the game and adapt, and then there's others that are just going to be all smoke and mirrors, and they're going to fall away essentially.
Yeah, I mean, you have this underlying technology. There's a lot of use cases, and that's why it can be so confusing for people, because what we're talking about is that there are different kinds of blockchains, and each blockchain is ultimately an underlying protocol. And what a protocol means is basically like it's the architecture that everything builds on top of. So most people are not going to be interacting directly with the code of the protocol, just like we don't deal in our own telecom or Wi-Fi, or, we use something that just makes it nice and easy for us. The average person is just going to build, they're going to log into an app.
Yeah.
So if I send, like, make an example, truckers, there's a huge business in lending money to truckers. Okay. One example. Now, trucker is got, I remember I had an uncle out of Texas was a trucker. Those trucks have got so much, their rig, they have so much gas. It's a lot of money. It ain't no big deal. I mean, if I put my car to the gas station, $40, but you take a rig to fill up with gas, you need to have a lot of money. Now, you have a contract that you got to go from A to B across the country. You need to have money. So there's a whole business model around lending money to truckers who have contracts, and there's factoring that happens. So then they send the money over to the trucker. Now, it's a multi-billion-dollar business, a huge business. The trucker doesn't care about Bitcoin. The trucker is going to basically, I think the world is that the trucker will get a stable token that I can then send to them instantly for no cost, as opposed to having gone through the existing solution that happens. And you have no gatekeepers. And that's one potential solution for an industry that allows to cut and reduce costs for people in payments. Now, he won't know he's selling crypto. He'll have no idea. But from his point of view, it's better, cheaper, faster. And if it saves a company, now maybe let's say crypto stable tokens save 5 cents a transaction or something, right? Whatever that number is. Well, at scale, if you're Walmart or if you're some large company to where you're dealing in hundreds of millions of transactions or billions of transactions, that's a lot of money at the end of the day in aggregate.
Yeah.
That's why it matters. And you won't have to go through a gatekeeper. You're going to be able to use your own software as money. For money software.
Yeah. Now, one thing I'm curious about, because, clearly you're very passionate about this and you're very knowledgeable about, how it works, the potential. But going through your background, although you were involved in various tech enterprises, mostly media kind of companies, there was nothing in your history that shouted, this guy's going to look to disrupt the banking industry.
No.
So how does that happen that, how did this trajectory happen that you got involved in this at all?
Well, my background, everybody has to have, it's like know your strengths, right? Like know your skill set. I don't code. And if somebody wanted me to build them something, you're going to dislike it a lot. So and if you judge an elephant on its ability to climb a tree, then an elephant is not a good animal.
Yeah.
They're not evolving, but I can't be judged by my ability to climb a tree. My skill set is in managing businesses. I mean, my long history, 20 plus years, is knowing how to make more money than I spend, coach people, hire people, build a business, making strategically smart decisions, listening a lot, right? Customer service, sales, like all of these things you have to do as a CEO, you're responsible for everything. And so I'm a generalist. And I think the higher up you get up the flagpole, the more you become a generalist in nature, as opposed to technically like really expert on a particular thing. And I think the best thing we did was we hired some really smart tech people. And how did we start Ternio? It actually started, the entrepreneurial story is we started trying to solve a problem, and that was focusing around using blockchain to track and trace impressions in digital advertising. And, we started there. And one of the things on our 40-plus page white paper was we had the BlockCard. And it was about trying to make it easy for people to get as an off-ramp with these digital assets.
Yeah.
Connected to a Visa card. It was one page. But when you're building a business and you're trying to find product market fit, you don't always know if you have an idea, you have a vision, but what the market accepts is a whole different thing. And here's the reality is we didn't have this big funding from VCs. We really had like a small amount of money comparatively to most companies. And we had to make a decision. We had on one hand, we had BlockCard where it was kind of like, we love this, take our money, a lot of excitement at the consumer level, or waiting for some of the largest companies in the world that move slow and, well, I really like this, but I don't know. We had some of the biggest companies come to us. But if we waited for them, we would be bled out in the streets, because talk is cheap. So we basically did a pivot from this blockchain and digital advertising solution focusing on fintech, which is really just eating up the world. Exchange of value is the core of commerce.
Yeah.
We're at the intersection of all commerce in the world. You want something and you want something and you exchange. And that's what I think where we really hit our thing. And our specifically, it's just the intersection of cryptocurrencies and the traditional banking fintech system. And it's really blown up for us in a good way.
Yeah. And then just to stay on your background, one thing that really caught my eye was the first line of your LinkedIn bio says, when I was 17 years old, I was homeless. I lived out of my car, worked 2 jobs, and found a way to graduate high school. Yeah. First off, that would break a lot of people. Why were you able to persevere in spite of that, do you think?
I've always been rebellious. So, not you don't pick your family, you just, it is what it is. And it's funny, I was telling you before we started that you're from California, and I when I was homeless, my story started in Irvine.
No, okay.
Imagine being in a very well-to-do area, being homeless in Irvine. And that's what happened. And I just had a very dysfunctional upbringing, and my family kind of was broken. And I hope that I can give my kids a much better upbringing and vision for the world. But the thing is, I think when you're tested with different challenges in the world, it is, everything in this world is a challenge in terms of whether you're going to push harder or if you're going to give up. And I will say that we were talking about skill set earlier. There is a skill set about hustle. Elon Musk is an incredibly exceptional man in that he's very, very smart, has tremendous vision, risked everything. People don't know how close he was to being. He's technically on paper the richest man in the world now, today, maybe not tomorrow, but today.
Yeah.
But people don't know how much this guy hustles. He puts in all of his time, right? He hustles. And I will say that one of my skill sets is that if it meant me working 2 jobs, if it meant me working 100 hours a week, whatever it took, it wasn't about necessarily, I never had this vision of trying to get rich. That was never my driving force. It was really just how do I find a roof over my head? And then it became, and I will say that out of all the challenges I had in my life, in different things, one of the blessings I had was I had some really great grandparents. And my father, who I have a great relationship with now, didn't then always push the idea of hard work and work ethic. And so one of the benefits I've had from the youth to now is that, and I hope I pass this on to my children as my legacy, is that it doesn't matter necessarily what you do, and if you want to be an artist or whatever you want to do in your life, there is something about whether it was I worked at McDonald's when I was 15, whatever you do it with exceptional attitude. Don't go into work thinking, well, what a shitty job. Well, no, it's got to be a shitty job if you go into work with that attitude. Yeah, maybe the job is financially exploiting you. Maybe you're making really bad, you're not making a good income. I get it. I've been there, I understand. But that doesn't mean when you're at work, you put in everything with a great attitude, and then you find a way to get yourself from where you are to whatever the hell the next step might be. You may not be thinking about how many to be CEO of a company, but you could be thinking about how do I go from making $9 an hour to how the hell can I become an assistant manager making 12 or 15? And before you know it, it's like one step on the ladder, and you get another step on the ladder. And that's what I did. And I got to a point where I was young, when I was basically at this press. I did a little bit of college, but I graduated quickly within work. There was not a job I didn't get a promotion at multiple times. So I was 19 years old, and I ran 2 stores at Blockbuster. I was 18, I had 1, right? And then I went to the corporate office, and I was 20, and I was working in the corporate office. And then I was 22 as a district manager. For anyone who's watching this, Blockbuster, it used to be the largest video store in the business, in the world.
No, I know. I used to have a card. I spent many an hour going through those freaking shelves looking for something. So I'm well aware. It used to be you could walk from New York to California just going from Blockbuster to Blockbuster. It was the video equivalent of Starbucks back then.
But as hard as it was, I look back on those days fondly, because what I experienced was true freedom. Because even though the world can be filled with tons of challenges, I will say that I was also lucky in that I never turned to drugs and I never turned to alcohol, because those kinds of things can really change and alter your world. They can alter. I had a lot of friends who were doing drugs in Irvine, California, and they're all like, I was like the straight edge, and like, come on, man, and I'm like, no, I'm good. And I do think that no matter how bad your situation is, just know that there are other people out there that are going to care for you. They're going to want to help you. And no one's going to help you more than you want to help yourself. So no matter how bad your situation is, just don't give up, put the grind in, and don't allow it to break you down. Because, by the way, no matter what your circumstances are, whether you have a shitty car, you don't make a lot of money, or whether or not you're, $1 billion in the bank, it does not define who you are. There are a lot of people who have got a lot of money who are horrible people. There are a lot of people who have nothing financially, but boy, are they great people. They have great heart, and they have great friends, and they're happy. So nothing can define you except for yourself, in my opinion.
Yeah, because, and is this, do you think this was just part of your DNA? Because it seems very apropos, because with this pandemic, most of the world has been thrown this tremendous curveball. Yeah. Be it people who are already out there and working, or college students who are trying to make it and then trying to go out into the world of work. And I think odds are there are a limited number of people who have overcome the kind of obstacles you've overcome. And I'm just curious, were you just born with that mindset? Because it seems like that's going to be the key for a lot of people moving forward in these weird times.
Well, I'll still remind you, as an American, I won the sperm lottery. I wasn't Bill Gates' son, but as an American, we have a lot of freedoms and opportunities that other people don't. And if, some people around the world, whether it just be some young kid in Syria who's living through a proxy war because of issues between Iran and Saudis and Israel or whatever, or somebody in Africa, or literally just like, there's plenty of countries around the world. Even just the poorest person in the United States, and what we have the opportunity to have free education, things like that, is way bigger and better than a lot of places around the world. As far as to you really don't know who you are until you're tested by the reality. Those challenges that you're going to face in the world, they're going to test you, and they're going to that to me will show your character and whether or not But my main message is anybody. There's nobody. I don't view myself better than anyone else. The main thing is just don't allow yourself to give up. It reminds me of when you played, I played basketball for a while, and if you did any sports at any time, it's kind of like you think you're on that last lap, and that's all you got. And you think that's all you can give. You've got nothing else. You're empty in the tank. The coach is like, keep going. And somehow, despite the fact that you feel like you've got nothing left, you find a new source of energy, and you figure it out. And I would just say that that's what life is, and surround yourself with people who are going to bring you up, not bring you down, because that matters too.
And then building off of your talking about winning. I think Bill Gates. It was Warren Buffett who uses the term. He won the ovarian lottery by being born in America at this time.
Sure.
It also said in your background that you're a very political person and you're very interested in geopolitics. What I'm wondering about is how has that helped or influenced you with your work, at a blockchain company? Because they seem completely unrelated, but then maybe not.
Well, they're unrelated completely, but I think that my interest in geopolitics and history and economics has existed before my interest in blockchain. And I do think that the interesting thing about blockchain and crypto is it's a global thing. So I never view the world through the lens of an American and only an American for the US. I've always taken an active, it's funny, I'll meet people and I'll say, hey, where are you from? And, some people hate that. Some people find that interesting. But then when someone's from Pakistan and I'll start talking about history in Pakistan, Benazir Bhutto getting assassinated, and they're like, how do you know about Pakistani politics? Or Israel politics. I follow a lot about that. Or I really try to be I'm genuinely interested just as a human being in things that happen in the world, and then I find that is a point of connectivity to other people, because and I always tell like I've always viewed it like this. Like when I'm talking to people, I have an active interest in people generally. I like people, right? And so I always try to find a connective point with those people, whether it's music or whether it's background or whether it's whatever it is. I always find that we're human beings, and I believe there's points of interest we're going to share a commonality with. And if we can rally around the things that we like and know, right, then it allows for, it's very easy to like that person, not because you agree with them, but because you have an active interest in a particular subject, whether it's, religion or whatever it is. But geopolitics is one of my favorite because it's not as simple as just Republicans and Democrats, which I think is a tired argument in the United States, although lately it's been scary. But it's more, geopolitics is more about kind of like the tectonic plates of like history and regimes and why they have issues. And usually geopolitics is kind of a non-American centric worldview, so it doesn't become so heated. There's not a lot of people in this world who have really heated opinions on the importance of the NATO relationship and with the United States. Like I'm interested in that. Most people don't have like this kind of powerful like you suck because you support NATO. Like it's a lot less divisive and a lot more, to me, interesting conversation.
Yeah. And I think it's a perspective that is needed a lot more. Especially as you're building a business that theoretically is going to be global. I mean, it's like, I don't know if you ever read that Thomas Friedman book, The World is Flat, but, he gives a great example where, back in, say, the 50s, or not even that far back, if you were a C student in Omaha, you had an advantage over the A student in Bangalore because just location. But because of the quote flattening of the world and the shrinking of things, it's so much more interconnected, and now you are competing with that A student in Bangalore.
It's true, and it is a true statement, and because of globalization. And I really like, I'm kind of a nerd on these kinds of conversations. I like talking about policies, and I like talking about data and numbers, and I'm always interested in facts, and I'm definitely this annoying person that when I talk to people who kind of off the cuff, they share their opinions based upon something they heard, and I'm like, well, like I'm not going to let you just walk by with an untruth. And we live in a world now where kind of truth is it's like optional. Everybody has their own truth today, and that scares the shit out of me, to be honest, because we more than ever now, we see the end result of what happens when you live in an environment where truth is no longer, there's not a settled truth. And that's scary because, and I'll give you an example, and I'm trying to be non-political, but I read this, Frank Luntz, who's a Republican pollster, said that 80% of, more or less, of Republicans that he polled, and only polled 800, but that's scientific polling, believed that the election was stolen from Donald Trump. And I just think that we live in, and so it's, of course, if you believe that the election was really stolen, there's really fraud, if that were the case, then you would find some kind of solace in saying, well, of course there were people who were going to, invade the Capitol and engage in insurrection because they're patriots fighting for the future of the country because the deep state is taking away stealing the election from the only dear leader who can protect us. Like, we need to at least have, and we don't have to agree on things, but we have to have a shared commitment to truth. And we see the end result of what happens when we have a divisive society and we can't agree on some basic facts. And that scares me so much, frankly.
Yeah. And what makes it especially interesting with what you do is because I would argue, trust is going to be a very important thing with your business, and especially because I think the reason cryptocurrencies and blockchain scare people is because you said they don't understand it. They don't understand the protocols that go under it, and again, it's the difference between that early PC and the early Mac and user interface. But what you guys are doing, I think, is really is on the one hand making it much simpler. Like, okay, as you said, you created a card. Even though the world is moving away from cards, people understand cards, and so the idea of having a block card, okay, this is connected, and I understand how this works. But there's it's still a scary thing, I think, for people to go into what they consider to be a whole new realm of transferring money and how do you guys combat that? How do you show, with facts, with truth, that, hey, this is a process worth trusting?
Well, that's always, anytime you have a new customer, that's always kind of the first question mark. We built a great reputation, so I think that over time, word of mouth is like anything else, whether or not you believe in something or not. I would say that it's interesting. Let's say, for example, there was somebody who was like, hey, my deposit's not showing, which doesn't happen often, right? But it has happened before. What's really cool about blockchain is we can say, okay, well, first, send us the transaction, we can look it up on the public blockchain. It's public. It's accessible to everybody. So they talk about trustless transactions. It's because we can see, well, what happened? Where is the funds? And sometimes, not boring you with technical details, we can identify that, okay, well, our listener, we're constantly listening for transactions to kind of hear when a transaction hits, something could go wrong, and we're like, okay, we found it, no problem, we resolved it, problem solved, and everybody knows what's going on. And so there's no doubt as to what happened because it's all tracked on the blockchain. So, but ultimately, you're still talking about a company, and a company still has to have as a reputation, and that reputation is connected to trust.
Yeah.
And you earn people's trust every single day, or you lose it. And we are working really hard to earn people's trust and to be a great product. That's really important to us.
Yeah. And I always thought, though, part of the allure of cryptocurrencies and things like that was that they were separate from all these traditional monetary banking systems. But you're, creating this bridge, this way in. So the first thought is, because for instance, one of our credit cards got, they spoofed the number or something and started seeing charges coming up. So my first thought is, okay, does this mean, will this BlockCard then be a way that people can get access to my cryptocurrency just like they can, my bank account?
Well, one of the benefits of having a Visa card is that you're basically, short of somebody hacking your account, right, which is if your funds are sitting in e-wallet, which we have 2FA for and we've got protections, it would take somebody socially engineering a hack of you as an individual, because we, as a company, I'm very confident about our security and how we've protected things. We've got very smart systems. We've not had, knock on wood, a security event up to this moment. And even if we did, we have protections beyond that after the fact. So I think that the way we're doing it is right. And let's say, for example, you had somebody who, like you were talking about, a Visa card, and I had this happen. It's scary, actually. All of a sudden, you're like, what the hell? I remember somebody bought 2 concert tickets on my, concert I would never go to, right? They bought concert tickets using my card. And I was like, where the hell did this come from? And you never know. You don't know how somebody got your card number.
Right.
But what do? You report it to your bank and you say, hey, this is not legit. And then you give an affidavit and they investigate it and you get your money back. And that's what we did. That's what we do now. It's just like any other Visa product. That's one of the great things of having a Visa type product. Now you said, okay, maybe the world is shifting away from Visa. That might be true not Visa, debit cards. That's true in, let's say, China. But in many other parts of the world, or at least definitely in the United States, we are a card-driven people. Now, maybe the millennials, maybe the younger ones, maybe they end up doing more like and I'll show you here, more like the Apple Pay, Google Pay, Samsung Pay. So you're not necessarily paying with your card, but you're paying with really a card in your phone.
Yeah.
And then, we got that too.
Mm-hmm.
So really the main point is, irrespective of if let's say that the customers want to pay with their retina scan and their thumbprint, well, we'll do that too. It's not a problem. If there's a technology that's connecting the merchant to the consumer, we're plugging in those things to allow for cryptocurrency to be really effective. Because to me, cryptocurrency, even if it's just stable tokens, is significantly superior to that of traditional banking with the ACHs and wires. That to me is the old 50-year-old technology that's going away, and what we're doing is like the new sexy thing.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I would agree. One thing that I didn't quite get when I was going through the Ternio website, there's a line in there that says that this is built to disrupt the digital advertising market. How is it specifically going to do that?
Well, we have like I said, we probably still have a white paper that's on the site that we started as a company focusing on digital advertising. But really, if you like look at Ternio.io, you're going to see it says, we basically we help you be your bank, right? Because we white label our technology. We're focused on fintech, and the digital advertising white paper that we have is part of our story. It's where we started, but we have, as much as I love the solution we built for digital advertising, the reality is where we've made our traction, where we've become really successful is in fintech. So you're kind of looking at something that was kind of just more part of our historical story.
Okay. That makes sense. And then I'm wondering also if this is a way, if you guys are a way for people to kind of stick their toe in the water of the world of blockchain and the world of cryptocurrency if they haven't yet. For instance, I was looking, it takes 5 minutes to create your BlockCard account. And then the 6-point-something% cash back you get is in cryptocurrency.
Crypto back rewards, yeah.
Is that, because, there's a lot of people that have not taken that step into exploring this particular world. Is this, possibly a great way for people to just kind of ease into that world in without having to plunk down $50,000 in Bitcoin?
Yeah, it just depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to we have bank accounts. They're literally FDIC insured bank accounts. You can ACH or wire in funds. You can buy Bitcoin. You can buy our token if you want. You can spend our token on the BlockCard. Or if you already have cryptocurrency and you want a really quick way to get in and out or to get out of it, you can put it on deposit to your card and spend instantly. Just depends on what the customer's trying to do. That's really the thing. We're not trying to get grandma to necessarily learn about cryptocurrency, but if grandma is interested, then she could use the BlockCard. But really our focus up until now has kind of been people who already understand crypto. I think our second iteration is going to be more of the technology behind stable tokens so that people aren't freaked out by the volatility. That's coming. Right now, if you go from knowing the only world which is just kind of like stable money, right? I'm not a big fan of saying and advocating to people, go from stable money into non-stable money. I don't think that's really to your benefit. Now, if you're going from Bitcoin, which is very volatile, you're getting into something else in crypto, well, that's fine, because you can kind of understand the nature of cryptocurrency and the fact that it can be very volatile. But I don't like the idea behind trying to convince people who don't already understand crypto and to get them into, if somebody, here's my recommendation, if somebody doesn't understand cryptocurrency, the absolute best thing they can do, in my opinion, do your own research, is just focus on Bitcoin exclusively. I'm a big believer in Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is amazing as an investment personally. That's my personal opinion. But yesterday crashed quite a bit. But remember, it was like $20,000 a month ago, and now it went to 42, and then it's at 32, and so it's one of those things where you're looking at it over the long haul. But if somebody's brand new, I'd just say focus on Bitcoin and not probably test the waters with anything beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
Learn a little bit.
Yeah. And then even with people that somewhat understand the space you're in, what's one of the bigger misconceptions that you have to knock down?
And people understand it?
Yeah, for people who somewhat understand, because you said, the first tier of adopters are people that do kind of already understand cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology, and to a point, I think there's a lot of people who understand a tiny bit about it, but still I'm wondering what kind of questions and misconceptions do you face as you discuss what you do with people?
Well, I think the biggest misconception I see in the industry is that people make decisions based upon what they hear from influencers on YouTube, which is to me very dangerous. Because a lot of these influencers get paid money to promote stuff, and beware, be very,
Yeah.
very careful with that. That scares the hell out of me because it's like there's a big influencers are very, very popular, and then people go and buy this token that they have no idea about and don't know that that company paid them. That's the biggest thing that scares me. Relative to BlockCard, the thing that I'd say the biggest misconception is um, probably like when you're depositing Bitcoin into your BlockCard, it's converted into our asset for you. And that's for several reasons. A, that's our product. So it uses the Turn token. Part two is different blockchains have some pretty high gas fees. So I'll give you an example. Like if you ever used Uniswap before, Chris?
No.
So Uniswap is this really popular decentralized exchange. It now does more volume than Coinbase.
Hmm.
It's only built on top of Ethereum smart contract. So you can trade with people without needing a third-party intermediary. There is no intermediary. Uniswap is an application that allows A and B to connect. Pretty cool. It's really cool. No one can tell you not to. Like you're in control of that. But Ethereum today has some pretty high gas fees in order to maintain a transfer because it's a decentralized network that's maintaining it. And these miners are maintaining it, and they get paid through these gas fees, these transaction fees. Well, some of these transaction fees are just like because DeFi is blowing up, right? Uniswap is a DeFi product. So some of these people are paying. I paid $18 before. I've had people tell me they paid $100 for one transaction. Now, if you're moving $1 billion and you pay $100, big deal. If you're moving $30 for $18, that's problematic. And so I'd say that until those kinds of things get solved, blockchain and cryptocurrencies aren't going to solve the world's problems. And so the reason we have built everything around the Turn token is that we're building an ecosystem just like Bitcoin took quite a bit of time to build a real ecosystem. So we're committed to that. But the Turn token, you can transfer it across the world in 2 seconds for no cost. And I think that, to me, that's sexy. That's the future, is us building a big enough ecosystem where it takes time to do it right. But once you're able to start sending money across the world or down the street, it's very fast and seamless with no costs. And that's the thing we're committed to. So some people don't like that about BlockCard. Most people, they learn about it and they start to understand it. But other than that, around the Turn token, which we're, like I said, we're firmly committed to, I think it's pretty simple. You sign in, you deposit, you do your KYC, you swipe your card or you put it in, you get a virtual card instantly. So you can go and buy stuff online or with your phone. And it's pretty intuitive from what I've, for most part, from what I've heard from people.
Yeah. And then one other thing you've said again and again in various interviews is you talk about how the adoption ramp for the internet is currently being mirrored by the adoption ramp for cryptocurrencies in the world of blockchain. But I wonder if I don't know if it'll be a little bit slower or a little bit more off, if only because you are dealing with people's money, where a lot of the internet adoption was, oh, let's look at this funny thing here or read this blog post there. You weren't putting quote cash on the line in the beginning.
Yeah, but listen, like I'll give you an example. There's so many different industries that are going to be wrecked by what's happening. Like I think what we're doing is going to really, not only is it great for people who have crypto to get in and out of, so it's kind of a little bit of an asymmetrical competition to exchanges because we're an off ramp, we're an on ramp, okay. But it's really a threat to like a Western Union type of business, because when we start having card programs in different parts of the world, you want to send money to Brazil and you can send money across the world in 2 seconds we'll charge you $1, right? And you can move $10,000 for $1. And then they get a card and they have a bank account instantly. Western Union can't compete with that. You got, existing solutions for mortgage that they're looking at. DeFi today, you have people, I was talking to a bank executive, I don't know, a month ago, he was saying about how their lending business was struggling. But DeFi is decentralized lending. And that business is blowing up in crypto. And so, for example, if you can earn just on stable dollars, okay? You can earn like 8% on your money. Now, Marcus, which is owned by Goldman Sachs, is basically doing commercials. They're spending money, millions of dollars, promoting how they've got 4 times the interest rate that you'll get from any other bank with their 1.4% offer. Meanwhile, in the cryptocurrency world, you can get 8%. You don't have to buy Bitcoin. You just got to have stable dollars, and you're getting an 8% return. There's some cool stuff happening because what's happening is you're connecting to a global marketplace, and you're seeing companies that are doing revenue shares. So, like, for example, let's say the bank, I'll give you an example, like JP Morgan Chase, let's just say they've got $100 billion in deposits, right? So you got a lot more than that. Well, they're lending that money out, and they're making a return on it. And they're giving you nothing, probably, and maybe a little bit if it's in a savings account or a money market account. For the most part, it's probably nothing. So they're making all of the money on lending your money out to other people and not giving you anything in return. But what's happening in decentralized finance or centralized finance through using blockchain and crypto is it's connecting a global marketplace that's giving people access to a revenue share on their own money. There is not a bank today that is going to be able to compete with that, and it's going to really upend that part of their business. Meanwhile, we're going to upend another part of their business, and they're going to get attacked on all sides, and that's why it's a scary time to own a traditional bank, in my opinion. Those are just a couple of examples. There's so many examples of how blockchain technology is going to undercut or affect or impact. I was just reading today, so Gary Gensler, so Joe Biden's going to be a president for people who don't want to accept that. Gary Gensler is going to be his Treasury Secretary, right? Or no, sorry, it's Janet Yellen. Gary Gensler is going to be his SEC guy. Gary Gensler literally taught a class on how blockchain and cryptocurrencies were going to revolutionize the way that we interact with money. So the new SEC guy, if he gets approved by the Senate, but he will because the Dems control that now, is very much a subject matter expert in that he taught at college, at a university, the subject of blockchain when so many people don't even understand what the hell it is. But here he is, this guy really gets it. Now, maybe, what does that mean for their rules? I don't know. Are they going to be clamping down on us like the recent thing with Mnuchin, with these wallet rules that they came out with? I think that a Biden administration is going to be significantly positive for cryptocurrencies generally.
Yeah, and putting it in more my level, a layman's terms, it makes me think of like I really enjoy reading Michael Lewis's books, The Big Short and Liar's Poker, all that kind of stuff. And I remember, I saw an interview with him where he said, I always say this is my last book about Wall Street and the cheating of the stock market. He said, and then someone will come to me with like, oh no, here's how they're doing it now, and then like Flash Boys comes out and stuff.
He's great, yeah.
And it's fascinating, but it makes me think like, wow, that could be with something along these lines with blockchain technology that could be a thing of the past. That kind of.
Well, here's what I'll say about that. The Wall Street guys, the Wall Street boys, are doing the same stuff. Okay, I'll tell you this. It's funny, you say Wall Street. When you think of Wall Street, you probably initially, tell me if you disagree, like I immediately think of New York.
Yeah, although because of reading Michael Lewis's books where he talks about, the stock exchange we see on television is just basically a movie set. I know that that's not the case, but it's still where my mind goes.
Well, a lot is happening in Chicago because Chicago has got the biggest hub when it comes to derivatives trading, right? Trading is Chicago. I mean, like obviously New York has got all the big banks, but Chicago is a huge trading hub. I mean, and it's amazing how there's this mixture between the Chicago, New York kind of trading firms that exist that are doing the stuff that is basically illegal in the stock market has moved over to the cryptocurrency world by far. Pump and dump schemes and all kinds of illegal stuff that probably shouldn't happen. The SEC is going to have to come after that and deal with it. Some of it will be easier, some of it won't be because if it's decentralized, there's certain elements that'll be harder to manage around, navigate around. But the consumers need to be careful. That's why I said be careful about like just being suckered into something because of some influencer. if somebody's promoting their own stuff, like I try not too hard to promote our own stuff because I really want people, I want you to know about it, but I try not to like, you make your own decision, you know? I'd rather be I'd rather interest you about conversation globally about like why the technology is amazing as opposed to talking about, you know, just my one side of the world. But I think that I wouldn't necessarily assume that the Wall Street guys and the traders are somehow like, you know, they're all cleaned up and everything, and crypto solves that problem. And you'll hear people use like, you hear the word trustless in crypto. So they say that all the time because you have the ability to do a peer-to-peer transaction without needing a third-party intermediary. And so by definition, it's trustless in that you don't have to trust, like here's why that matters. With Bitcoin, okay, let me step. Is it okay if I explain my thought process?
Yeah, no, go for it.
Okay, so the Federal Reserve was created because it's a central clearinghouse. And people don't understand that, like, let's say $50 trillion in ACHs happened in 2018, okay, as an example. 20 billion transactions with $50 trillion in value, and every single ACH went through the Federal Reserve. Now, they didn't do that because they're just some nefarious organization like the old images from the early 1900s where they're like it's a big tentacles and stuff, the Fed.
Yeah.
It's really just because technologically speaking, like you need a central clearinghouse. Otherwise, you can have a double spend issue. So a bank can send $10,000 to one, to another, to another, to another, to another, and they can send it out to 1,000 banks, $10,000, and they made a lot of money, and they could screw the system. So the Fed works as a central clearinghouse to stop for double spend. And what Bitcoin solved for was the double spend issue without requiring a central clearinghouse. That's what it solved for on a technological level. So yeah, Bitcoin kind of obviously speculative, but the technology with blockchain means that you have a peer-to-peer solution, which is where the term trustless comes from. Because if I know that you sent me Bitcoin and I receive it in my wallet, I know that I have that Bitcoin. There is no doubt. I don't have a fake Bitcoin. There's no counterfeit Bitcoin, although you can have people create Bitcoin gold, which is bullshit or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But Bitcoin, BTC, with an address that's sent from X wallet address to Y wallet address, if I get it get a transaction, it is Bitcoin. It is not fake. So it is trustless. I don't need a validator from JP Morgan Chase or anybody else. I know I have it, right? So what people do is they use that language and they say, okay, well, it's trustless. And then they use that and they abuse it for the newbies, and they find a way to trick people because they say, oh, it's trustless. But really what they're really preying on people, because this industry has plenty of snake oil salesmen. The same people who sell, and I'm not saying Forex is snake oil. I've never been in Forex. I mean, I'm sure it's a big whatever, but between Forex and these other industries that people, they can kind of be shady, or maybe they're legit. I don't know, but there's a lot of people who crypto's a big marketplace now. It's huge now, and a lot of people who are taking these scams that they learned from back in the day, and they get into these, they get suckered into scams in crypto because these scammers are coming over here. So just be careful. If you got anybody promising you, like, it's amazing how often, like, there was a hack recently of Twitter. Maybe you remember this?
Yeah.
They're like from Joe Biden's account. It's like, if you send me 0.01 Bitcoin, I'll send you 1 Bitcoin or something.
Right.
Okay, right. Like, those things are parts of the growing pains of a new industry like crypto.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I've kept you way longer than I said I would, but this has been really awesome. But I do want to ask. I mean, because we've hit all of my material. Is there anything that you don't get asked that you wish people would ask you about when it comes to this stuff?
There's so much to it. Honestly, no. I mean, I'm trying to think. I already told my piece about the whole influencer piece. That's usually the one that gives me I worry about the most for the newbies. I'd say is the audience mostly kind of learning crypto, mostly.
Yeah, definitely.
I'd say probably my favorite thing to tell new people is more about Bitcoin. You may not understand it. It can still be highly manipulated, just so you know. It does experience manipulation, so don't think that somehow, don't worry. Like, it was at 42,000, and then all of a sudden it crashed to 32,000. Like, you don't want to be the guy buying it at 42, losing it at 32, you know, in that temporary moment. But over the long haul, I will tell you that I'm a huge, huge believer in Bitcoin. And if you're one of those people who's just busy and you're just kind of like, I don't have a lot of time, just go and look up the Bitcoin white paper. Just Google Bitcoin white paper. It's 8 pages. It's not complicated. It's a genius work of art, from everything from economics to technology to monetary policy. It's a genius
work of art. It's very simple. I mean, it's not simple to read. Parts of it are kind of complicated, but for the most part, it gives you the insight into the creator of the creators. There's probably plural of Bitcoin. And I would say that I really do firmly believe that for anybody who maybe doubts the realities of Bitcoin, they're missing out on something very big. I believe that as an investment, Bitcoin over the long haul is going to stand the test of time in a way that is going to dominate. It has thus far dominated other investments. And I believe that to continue to be true because of one thing, and this is the purpose it was built upon. Forget everything else. It's built upon scarcity. There are only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin. And every 3 years, there's a halving, or the 4 years, there's a halving. So every hour, 6 Bitcoin get popped out by these miners for managing this decentralized network. But in 3 more years, it'll be free. And then 4 more years after that, it'll be, because it's a halving every 4 years. And then it'll be 1.5. And so what you have is more and more and more people wanting it, but there's only ever going to be X amount of Bitcoin. And so what that creates is an inelasticity, which I talk about all the time, of the price, because there's supply demand. So Bitcoin is a phenomenal long-term. You don't worry about the short-term volatility. Long-term, Bitcoin is amazing. That's probably my favorite thing to tell new people.